The morning sun filtered gently through the white linen curtains, casting soft shadows on the hardwood floor. Sophia reached for the other side of the bed instinctively, still half asleep, only to find it cold, untouched. Her fingers curled around the empty sheet, a quiet sigh escaping her lips. She sat up slowly, brushing her long braids away from her face, listening for any trace of movement. Silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, echoing kind that feels too deliberate. She wrapped her robe around herself and walked barefoot to the kitchen, her heart already preparing for what her eyes would confirm. Sebastian was gone. Again. His car keys were missing from the hook, and the coffee machine hadn't been touched. Just like the day before, and the one before that. She stared at the untouched coffee mug on the counter, his favorite one, the navy ceramic with a chipped handle, a wedding gift. The ache in her chest was familiar now, dull but persistent, like a bruise that never fully healed. She sat at the small breakfast table and stared at the silent phone on the placemat. No message, no call. Not even a curt meeting ran late like he used to send. Sophia lowered her eyes, remembering how mornings used to be filled with laughter, shared glances, and coffee-scented kisses. It was strange how something so warm could turn so cold without warning. Or maybe there were warnings, and she just didn't want to see them. As the clock ticked on, the emptiness in the house mirrored the one creeping into her heart. And for the first time, Sophia whispered to herself, "Where did you go, Sebastian?" But she already knew, somewhere far from her. The aroma of garlic and thyme wafted through the air as Sophia stirred the pot of egusi soup, the spicy scent masking the subtle unease tightening in her chest. She had gone all out tonight, his favorite dish with soft pounded yam and a side of chilled zobo. She didn't even ask why she felt the need to try. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was desperation. Either way, she set the table carefully, folding the napkins with precision, lighting a candle like she used to back when laughter used to bounce off these walls. The clock struck 8:47 p.m. Still no sign of Sebastian. His seat remained untouched, a quiet accusation. She picked up her phone and dialed. No answer. She tried again, this time leaving a message, trying hard to keep her voice steady. "Dinner's ready, if you're still coming home." She ended the call quickly, ashamed of how small her voice had sounded. By 10:06 p.m. she was sitting alone, staring at her untouched plate. The soup had gone lukewarm, the pounded yam stiffening under the kitchen light. She forced a bite, swallowing past the lump in her throat. Then the front door clicked open. Her heart lifted for a split second before crashing again when Sebastian walked in without a word, barely glancing her way. He reeked of whiskey and someone else's perfume, soft and floral, not like hers. He dropped his briefcase, not even attempting an apology. "You're late," she said softly, not with anger, but weariness. He shrugged, tugging off his tie. "Meeting ran over," he mumbled. Sophia looked at him, really looked at him. How distant he felt, even standing in the same room. "You said that yesterday." He didn't respond. Instead, he headed to the bedroom, leaving her there, dinner cold, heart colder. And that night, as she scraped the food into the trash and washed the dishes in silence, Sophia realized something terrifying. She was getting used to this. It was an ordinary Tuesday at the design firm where Sophia worked, until the low buzz of whispers began. Two junior staffers, Nkechi and Dara, huddled by the coffee machine, their voices hushed, but not low enough. "That's the girl I saw at Terrace Lounge with him again," one said. "She's boldo, holding hands like she owns the man." The other giggled. "I even heard her name, Mia something. I think she's in PR." Sophia approached, pretending to refill her mug, but every word hit like a pebble on glass. Her hands trembled slightly, barely steadying the coffee pot. She didn't confront them. She didn't have to. Their startled eyes met hers, and the guilt was immediate. She offered a tight smile and walked away, heart pounding. The name had landed like a hammer, Mia. She didn't know the face yet, but now she had a name to place beside the scent on his shirts. That evening, she sat on the edge of the bed, her laptop open, browser tabs full of social media profiles. She scrolled until a photo caught her breath, Sebastian's tagged pictures. There she was, young, polished, skin like caramel, eyes mischievous, Mia, smiling in a low-cut red dress at a product launch, her hand casually resting on Sebastian's shoulder. Sophia stared at the image, the way his body angled toward Mia, the ease in their shared smirk. No trace of guilt, no attempt at secrecy. Just boldness wrapped in lip gloss and arrogance. Her fingers hovered over the screen, her mind echoing questions she didn't have the energy to ask aloud. How long? Why her? Wasn't I enough? She closed the laptop slowly and sat back, the darkness of the room pressing against her like a wave. She didn't cry. Not yet. Not until she realized that Mia wasn't just a shadow anymore. She was becoming a presence. Change wasn't abrupt. It was a slow drift, like watching a shoreline disappear from a boat you didn't realize was moving. One morning, Sophia woke to find Sebastian's pillow missing from their bed. At first, she thought he had gotten up early again, but then she saw the half-packed suitcase resting on the bedroom floor, and the extra pillow now perched on the guest bed. There was no conversation, no warning, just relocation by omission. That night, he didn't come in to say goodnight. No soft, "good night, babe," no gentle tap on the shoulder, just silence. And by morning, the gap between them had cemented into routine. He'd wake, shower, leave. No kiss, no breakfast. She stopped asking why, because the silence gave her all the answers. "You're moving into the guest room," Sophia asked one evening, her voice calm but searching. Sebastian barely looked up from his phone. "It's just easier. I have late nights." She folded her arms. "You mean you have late nights with her?" That made him pause, but only for a moment. "Let's not do this now," he replied, walking past her like she was a nuisance, not a wife. Days turned into weeks, and the man who once couldn't sleep without wrapping himself around her now avoided her touch entirely. He stopped noticing the new dresses, stopped complimenting her food, stopped asking how her day went. She could have vanished, and he wouldn't have blinked. But Sophia did blink, and every time she did, she felt herself hardening. With every cold shoulder and curt reply, she wasn't just being broken, she was being reshaped. Not into a victim, but into something sharper, something ready. Sophia didn't plan the confrontation. It wasn't calculated or rehearsed. It simply erupted one Sunday afternoon when she found one of Sebastian's shirts in the laundry basket, smeared with pink lipstick on the collar. She held it up, her fingers trembling. Her heart wasn't shocked, but the sight was a final straw that made silence unbearable. She walked into the living room, where Sebastian sat scrolling through his phone, completely at ease. "Whose lipstick is this?" she asked, voice steady, holding the shirt out like evidence in a courtroom. He looked up, barely glancing at the shirt. "Maybe yours," he replied dryly. "You think I wear pink lipstick, Sebastian?" she asked, the hurt cracking beneath her words. "Don't do this, Sophia," he sighed, getting up and brushing past her. "Do what?" she snapped, turning toward him. "Ask for honesty? Demand some respect?" He shook his head and scoffed. "You're overreacting. It's always drama with you lately." Her hands dropped to her sides as she stared at the man she no longer recognized. "You lie so easily now," she said, her voice breaking despite her effort to remain strong. "There used to be a time I meant something to you." Sebastian turned around, visibly irritated now. "You still mean something," he muttered. "But people change, Sophia. Life changes. Maybe it's not just me. You've changed too." The words struck her like a slap. She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. He had twisted it so easily, turning her into the problem. She stood there in the stillness, watching him head back to the guest room, as if the confrontation never happened. But it did happen, and in that moment, something inside her shifted. It wasn't rage, it wasn't desperation. It was clarity. She saw him for who he was, a man too cowardly to confess, too arrogant to believe she would ever leave. And that clarity didn't come with tears, it came with purpose. In the quiet of her study, Sophia sat cross-legged on the couch with Sebastian's forgotten tablet clutched in her lap. He'd left it charging overnight, unlocked. It wasn't snooping, it was survival. Her fingers moved with hesitation at first, but curiosity quickly turned to dread. There they were, messages from a contact saved only as M. One read, "Last night was perfect. I love how bold you were this time." Another, "When are you finally cutting her off?" Sophia scrolled through photos of Mia with pouty smiles and suggestive poses, draped over Sebastian's side like a trophy. Each word, each image was a dagger twisting deeper. But she didn't cry. Instead, she pressed her hand to her chest, grounding herself. She read on, consumed by the confirmation of what she'd long suspected, but reading it hurt in a way guessing never could. Her thumb hovered over the forward button, but she didn't press it. There was no one to send these to. What could she say to Isabella? What would she gain by confronting Sebastian again? She backed out of the messages and opened a notepad instead, typing out her emotions with trembling fingers. I feel invisible in my own home, like a ghost watching strangers play house. She stared at the words, then deleted them. She started over. You made promises with your mouth while your hands were already reaching for someone else. Delete. Try again. Every version felt both too much and not enough. In the end, she saved the draft and closed the tablet. Not everything needed to be sent. Some truths were meant to be held, simmered, and wielded when the time was right. And in that silence, as the weight of betrayal hung in the air like humidity, Sophia made an unspoken vow. She would no longer play the fool in a game she hadn't even agreed to join. From now on, she was watching, and she was learning. Sophia sat in her car across the street from the Marriott Suites, her eyes locked on the glass doors of the hotel. It had started as a coincidence, seeing a reservation email for 2 on Sebastian's shared calendar. But now it was confirmation. She had followed the details quietly, arriving early and parking discreetly in a shaded corner. At exactly 7:26 p.m., a sleek black sedan pulled up. Mia stepped out first, dressed in a short emerald dress and heels that clicked with confidence. Then came Sebastian, smiling as he held the door for her. They looked good together, like the world had blessed their deceit. But what made Sophia's stomach twist wasn't their closeness. It was how freely they moved, unbothered by secrecy. There was no shame, no hidden gestures, just public comfort. That, she realized, was how sure Sebastian was that Sophia would never dare fight back. She raised her phone slowly and began taking pictures, time-stamped, clear, undeniable. The camera captured more than just betrayal. It captured arrogance. The way Mia leaned into Sebastian, the way he smiled at her like he used to smile at Sophia. Click. Another photo. She zoomed in to catch Mia's hand slipping into his back pocket. Click. Her hands didn't shake this time. She was documenting history now, hers. For months, she'd been shrinking, questioning, second-guessing her instincts. But the lens had a way of stripping away denial. When they disappeared into the lobby, Sophia didn't drive away immediately. She sat there in her still car, surrounded by darkness, letting the images burn into her memory. Her reflection stared back from the rearview mirror, tired eyes, lips pressed in resolve. The mirror cracked that night, not from rage, but from revelation. And from that crack, a new version of Sophia began to form, one who saw everything clearly and who was no longer afraid of what came next. The late afternoon sun cast golden stripes across Isabella's living room rug, but the air between the two women was heavy with unspoken truths. Sophia sat curled at the edge of the couch, slowly stirring a cup of chamomile tea, her fingers tracing the rim with distraction. Isabella watched her carefully from across the coffee table. "You've lost weight," she finally said. Sophia gave a tired smile. "Stress burns calories, I guess." That answer didn't sit well with Isabella. She leaned forward, elbows on knees, her tone sharpening. "And how long are you going to keep letting this man reduce you into a ghost of yourself?" Sophia looked away, her silence louder than any confession. "You deserve more than breadcrumbs and lies, Soph. You know that, right?" The words sank in, deep and uncomfortable. For the first time, Sophia nodded slowly, her eyes glistening, but not from tears. From resolve. Isabella wasn't done. "You're still legally married, which means you still have leverage," she said firmly. "But you can't keep crying in secret and pretending you're okay. That's not strength. That's surrender." Sophia's shoulders tensed. "I'm not ready to leave him yet," she said. "Not because I still want him, but because I need to understand why he thinks I'm easy to discard." Isabella sighed, sitting back. "Then at least protect yourself. Talk to a lawyer, secure your finances. Don't let him walk out and leave you with nothing but pain." There was a long pause before Sophia responded. "I'm not letting him walk out," she whispered. "I'm letting him walk into something." That response made Isabella raise her brows. "What does that mean?" Sophia set down her cup and met her best friend's eyes. "It means he's not the only one who can act quietly. In that moment, Isabella saw it, the faint flicker of power returning to Sophia's eyes. It wasn't rage. It was something colder, more calculated. And it was just beginning. The law firm was discreetly tucked between a pharmacy and a tailor's shop, unremarkable at first glance, just like Sophia wanted. She clutched a folder of financial documents to her chest as she stepped inside, the receptionist barely glancing up before guiding her to a small office down the hall. The door read Owen Adwale, Esq. When it opened, a lean man in his 30s with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor gestured for her to sit. "You're Isabella's friend," he said with a polite nod. "She told me you might come." Sophia offered a weak smile. "She always knows when I'm out of options." Owen didn't press her. Instead, he slid a legal pad across the desk. "Start from wherever you're comfortable." Sophia hesitated. Then the words came about Sebastian's emotional abandonment, the suspected infidelity, the withdrawal of affection, and now the financial secrecy. Not once did her voice shake. She didn't cry. She spoke like a woman making a declaration, not seeking sympathy. Owen listened without interruption, his pen scribbling only when necessary. When she finished, he tapped the pad gently. "You have more control than you think," he said. "But let me be clear. Are you here to file for divorce?" Sophia paused, her expression unreadable. "Not yet," she said. "I want to prepare." Quietly. "I don't want him knowing I've been here." Owen studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "We can freeze joint accounts, transfer your assets into a trust, and start documenting evidence. But you'll need to keep playing your part, calm, unaware, even affectionate if necessary." She nodded without hesitation. "I've been playing that part for months." As she stood to leave, Owen added, "Men like him never expect the quiet ones to strike. That's their first mistake." Sophia turned at the doorway, the ghost of a smile flickering on her lips. "And their last," she replied, before stepping out into the sunlight, calmer, colder, and more prepared than she'd ever been. 3 weeks later, Sophia sat in her bedroom cross-legged on the floor, a small black box in her lap. Owen had delivered it earlier that day, discreet surveillance tech, barely larger than a coin, capable of recording both video and audio. She installed the first camera behind the living room bookshelf, angled toward the couch where Sebastian took his late-night calls. Another went in the guest room, tucked inside a hollowed-out power bank. With each placement, her hands grew steadier. This wasn't revenge. This was insurance. Documentation. The kind of truth no one could argue against. That night, as she lay in bed alone, she watched the live feed on her tablet. At 11:03 p.m., Sebastian came home, his phone lit up. He smiled at something on the screen. "Can't wait to see you again," he whispered. Then he sent a voice note. "She's asleep. Same time tomorrow." Sophia's stomach twisted, but she didn't look away. The next day, Owen met her at a quiet cafe. She showed him snippets of the footage, and his jaw clenched. "This is more than enough to prove a pattern," he said. "He's comfortable, arrogant. That works in your favor." Sophia nodded. "He doesn't even think I'm watching." Owen gave her a look of reluctant admiration. "You're playing this smart. Just don't lose yourself in it." Sophia sipped her coffee. "I already lost myself. Now I'm just finding out who I really am." When she returned home that evening, Sebastian was already asleep, deep, peaceful, unaware. She stood at the doorway of the guest room, watching his chest rise and fall. Not with love, not with longing, just with quiet curiosity. The man snoring in front of her had no idea the walls around him were now eyes. And those eyes didn't blink. Mia tapped her freshly manicured nails against her wine glass as she and Sebastian lounged in a private booth at Ember Lounge. The candlelight flickered across her flawless skin, her lips curled in that signature smirk that always made Sebastian forget logic. "So, when do we stop sneaking around like rebellious teenagers?" she asked, her voice dipped in sugar but laced with steel. Sebastian chuckled. "Soon. These things take time." Mia tilted her head. "It's been almost a year, Seb. If you want me, really want me, then be done with her." Her words were bold, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of insecurity. She wanted more than stolen nights. She wanted Sophia's life, her home, her status, even her last name. "I've already filed," he said with a smug grin. "I just haven't told her yet." "I'm doing it clean, no drama," Mia leaned in. "Make it fast. I'm not here to be your little secret anymore." And for the first time, Sebastian didn't resist. He nodded. What Mia didn't know was that this boldness wasn't rooted in love. It was rooted in conquest. She liked the power that came with Sebastian's attention. The way heads turned when she walked into restaurants with him, the way he spent like a man desperate to impress. And Mia was ambitious. She wasn't used to being second. "I want the house," she said suddenly, sipping her drink. "The one in Lecky, the one with the white balcony." Sebastian laughed. "You're getting ahead of yourself." But she didn't laugh. "I'm serious. If we're going to start fresh, I want that house to be ours. I've already imagined my wine shelf in the dining room." Her words were playful, but Sebastian didn't realize she meant every syllable. He saw her as a fling with pretty skin and demanding lips. She saw him as a stepping stone to a life she believed she deserved. And now, with Sophia unknowingly watching every conversation unfold from miles away, both Sebastian and Mia were inching closer to the very web Sophia had been spinning, thread by calculated thread. The morning was overcast when Sebastian walked into the kitchen where Sophia stood pouring water into a kettle. He didn't greet her, didn't offer a glance, just pulled a file from his briefcase and placed it quietly on the marble counter. "These are the papers," he said without emotion. Sophia didn't turn. "What papers?" Her voice was calm, controlled. "A divorce," he replied. "Let's just get it over with." She finally faced him, her expression unreadable. "That's cold, even for you," Sebastian shrugged. "It's cleaner this way. No point dragging out something that's already over." Sophia took the file, opened it, and skimmed through it with a clinical precision that unnerved him. "You didn't even include a personal note," she said with a dry chuckle. "What happened to the man who promised me forever with tears in his eyes?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. And in that silence, a strange discomfort settled into his chest. She signed the documents in front of him without hesitation. It was the first time he saw her hands steady in weeks. That should have satisfied him, but something about her calmness made his stomach tighten. "So that's it?" she asked, handing him the pen. "You walk away, and she walks in?" He sighed. "I didn't plan for things to end this way, Sophia." "But you made sure they did," she replied. Then she turned back to the stove, her back to him. "You can leave the keys on the table when you're done packing your things." Sebastian stared at her for a moment, half expecting her to cry, to beg, to fight, but she didn't, and that made him uneasy. "You're taking this well," he muttered. "I've been taking a lot of things well, Sebastian," she said. "This one's just the final chapter in your book." He left without another word, and as the door closed behind him, Sophia smiled faintly to herself. His shift was exactly what she'd waited for. Mia twirled in front of the mirror, wrapped in a silk champagne-colored dress that hugged her curves with dangerous elegance. "We need something grand," she said, turning to Sebastian, who was lounging on the hotel bed, shirtless and half distracted. "Dinner's not enough. I want fireworks. I want champagne. I want to celebrate the end of her." Sebastian chuckled lazily. "You're really excited about this, huh?" She walked over and sat on his lap, resting her arms around his neck. "Of course I am. You're mine now. No more hiding. I want a weekend away, something romantic, just us. You and me, no guilt, no secrets." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. All right. I'll book something." She stood again, grabbing her phone. "Make it the Cliffside Resort in Obudu. I've always wanted to go. Imagine us sipping wine as the sun sets behind the hills." She paused, then whispered, "It'll be our rebirth." Across the city, Sophia watched the conversation unfold from a live stream fed by the bugged smartwatch she had gifted Sebastian months ago, one he wore religiously without suspicion. She didn't blink as Mia rattled off details for the resort booking, the dates, the suite preference. Sophia noted it all down on a notepad, her pen moving with surgical precision. "Let them celebrate," she murmured to herself, her voice low and focused. "Let them toast to destruction with glasses they think they filled." There was no jealousy in her gaze now, only quiet anticipation. The trap had teeth, and they were willingly walking into it, hand in hand. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about precision, control, and most of all, timing. As Mia gushed about private chefs and couples massages, and Sebastian laughed without a trace of guilt, they had no idea they were planning their celebration in the same hour Sophia was perfecting their downfall. Owen leaned back in the dimly lit cafe, his laptop open between two mugs of black coffee and a pile of gadget cases. "You've been watching, collecting, documenting," he said, glancing up at Sophia. "But now it's time to make them watch themselves." Sophia nodded, her fingers lightly tapping the table. "I want everything synced. I need eyes on both of them, discrete real time." Owen reached into his bag and pulled out two tiny trackers, one disguised as a luxury keychain, the other as a designer brooch. "This goes on Mia's purse," he explained, handing her the keychain. "And this will be stitched into Sebastian's new blazer." Sophia looked at him, surprised. "You got into his closet?" Owen smirked. "Isabella knows the tailor. He owes her a favor. Don't worry, he won't feel a thing." That night, Sebastian found the blazer draped on the bed, wrapped in a garment bag with a tag. "Thought you might need some sharp for your celebration weekend." He didn't question it. He assumed it was a parting gift from Sophia, a sign of closure, maybe guilt. But the moment he slid it on, Sophia activated the GPS signal from her tablet. The pulsing red dot now tracked every movement he made. Meanwhile, Mia flaunted her new purse proudly on social media, unaware that every selfie was a breadcrumb. Owen worked silently from his tech lab, setting up motion alerts and timed recordings. "They think they're 2 steps ahead," he said over the phone to Sophia. "But they're walking through a house made of glass." Sophia smiled into the receiver, her tone unwavering. "Good. Let's make sure it shatters at just the right time." The box of parchment paper sat unopened on Sophia's writing desk for weeks. She had bought it in a moment of impulse. Something about the weight of it felt permanent. That afternoon, she finally opened it. One by one, she began writing letters. Not emails, not typed notes, real letters, with ink, with intention. The first was addressed to Mia. It wasn't venomous, it was precise. "You were never the prize. You were the placeholder he needed to feel young again. He doesn't love you. He never did. I know this because he never loved me either, not truly. We were both costumes to him, worn when it suited him." The words flowed easily, steady and cold. Then came Sebastian's letter. "You taught me to doubt my worth. But I thank you for the lesson. Because when you stripped me of everything, I discovered a version of myself you never deserved." She sealed each envelope and tucked them into their designated bags, Mia's purse and Sebastian's travel duffel. She timed it perfectly, just hours before their scheduled departure. Her hands didn't tremble, her chest didn't tighten. She felt nothing but clarity. These letters weren't for confrontation, they were mirrors, meant to reflect everything the two of them had pretended not to see. Before the ink dried, she folded a third sheet, an unsigned note with no greeting. Just one sentence: "You'll understand when the celebration ends." This one, she slid between Sebastian's clothes, hidden among his cologne and folded boxers. By the time they discovered them, it would be too late to run. Sophia leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. There was a freedom in telling the truth, especially when it was wrapped in silence. She wasn't shouting. She was preparing the stage for their own words to echo back at them. The air inside Owen's office was thick with anticipation as he clicked through the files on his monitor, confirming the legal shift Sophia had requested. "It's done," he said, turning the screen so she could see. "You now hold primary access to the trust account. All joint savings have been dissolved, and your name is now listed as the sole owner of the Leckie house." Sophia exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the digital deed. "And he won't know until it's too late?" Owen nodded. "He signed the consent when you both agreed to the separation terms, buried in the fine print. You played your part well." She leaned back, her voice cool. "He thought I was broken. That's the only reason he let his guard down. The weight of years of pain was finally being converted into power. Not revenge, just reclamation." She returned home that afternoon to find Sebastian's car gone, the house eerily quiet. With her tablet in one hand and a silent confidence in the other, she walked through the property like it was brand new. Her footsteps no longer echoed with sorrow, they resonated with ownership. She paused at the doorway of the master bedroom, now hers again. Her fingers brushed over the frame of the photo she hadn't yet removed, one of them from their wedding day, still smiling, still lying. She didn't smash it, she didn't burn it. She left it exactly where it was, a monument to the man who underestimated her. By the next morning, her signature had gone through on every legal file. Sebastian would still toast with Mia, blissfully unaware that the home he planned to bring her back to no longer belonged to him. Sophia stood by the window as dusk crept in, watching the world shift around her. "Let them celebrate," she whispered. "Let them believe it's theirs, until the ground disappears beneath their feet." The resort bar gleamed under dim lights, its marble counter reflecting Mia's glossy red nails as she stirred her cocktail lazily. Across from her sat a woman she barely knew, an influencer friend of a friend named Sasha, who had once dated someone from Sebastian's industry. Their conversation began with fashion, drifted into celebrity gossip, and then, under the sway of 3 mojitos, slid into dangerous territory. "So, you really snagged the husband?" Sasha asked with a teasing smirk. Mia smirked back, twirling the straw between her fingers. "Snagged? No. He handed himself to me." "Like a gift," Sasha laughed, leaning in. "Seriously, though, was it love or just opportunity?" Mia sipped her drink slowly, then whispered, "Does it matter? He was bored, and I made him feel like a king again. That's all men ever want. And now I get the house, the perks, the lifestyle. Let his wife keep her dignity. I'll keep his money." Unbeknownst to Mia, the designer clutch she placed beside her wine glass carried more than lipstick and a portable charger. It carried a live audio recorder Sophia had planted just days ago. Every word, every casual cruelty, was being streamed straight to Owen's secure server and Sophia's hidden dashboard back in Lagos. "He doesn't even see how replaceable he is," Mia continued, giggling. "Honestly, once the novelty wears off, I'll probably get bored too." Sasha raised a brow. "You're savage." Mia leaned back, stretching languidly. "No, I'm smart. He left his wife thinking he upgraded, but I've been playing my own game from the start." Meanwhile, back home, Sophia watched the transcript in real time, her face still. No shock, no bitterness, just confirmation. Mia wasn't a threat, she was a decoy. And Sebastian, poor blind Sebastian, was merely the fool clapping for his own execution. Sebastian stood on the balcony of their resort suite, staring out at the lush hills and winding rivers below. The air was cool, the view spectacular, and Mia was inside choosing which silk robe to wear for dinner. Everything seemed perfect until he opened his email. The message was from the real estate attorney he'd worked with during the divorce. The subject line read, "Final ownership confirmation, property transfer completed." Confused, he clicked it open. The document confirmed that the house in Lekki was now officially owned by Sophia Adalik, sole proprietor. Not joint, not shared. His name had been removed entirely. His pulse quickened. He dialed the attorney immediately. "There's a mistake," he said sharply. "I never signed off on a full transfer." The man on the line responded calmly. "Actually, you did. Clause 7C of your separation agreement. It's legally binding." Sebastian's mouth went dry. "But how?" Inside the resort suite, Mia emerged in a short gold robe, ready to be admired. "Everything okay, babe?" she asked, noticing the tension on his face. He put his phone down and forced a smile. "Yeah, just a minor mix-up with the bank. I'll sort it." He couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. How could he admit that while he was toasting his freedom, Sophia had quietly taken the very foundation he'd promised Mia? He walked to the minibar and poured himself a double shot of scotch. She played me, he thought, the realization finally cracking through his arrogance. But there was no time to react, no space to process. Mia was pulling him toward the bed, whispering about champagne and candlelight. And as he kissed her, his mind drifted back to Sophia, her stillness, her silence, her calm acceptance. It had all been a performance, and he, in all his pride, had given her the stage. The sky burned orange as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a golden haze across the private cliffside dining terrace. Mia clinked her wine glass against Sebastian's, laughter tumbling from her lips. "To us," she toasted, "to new beginnings, no more secrets, and a life with no drama." Sebastian forced a grin, raising his glass in return. "To us," he echoed, the wine tasting oddly bitter on his tongue. The table was adorned with rose petals and candlelight, their plates gleaming with lobster and saffron rice. A live saxophonist played soft jazz a few feet away. On the surface, it was perfect. Picturesque. Instagram-worthy. But inside Sebastian's chest, an unease had taken root. He'd spent the afternoon trying to contact his bank and couldn't access a single account tied to Sophia. Everything had been rerouted, every asset frozen or locked. As Mia leaned in, snapping a selfie of them mid-toast, Sebastian glanced at the blinking smartwatch on his wrist, the one Sophia had once gifted him for his birthday. He suddenly wondered why she'd been so generous at the time, why she hadn't fought harder when he left, why she never screamed, never begged. Mia noticed his distraction. "What's with the long face?" "We're in paradise," she teased. He shook his head. "Just tired." But in that moment, he wasn't tired, he was unraveling. And miles away, in a dimly lit room surrounded by screens, Sophia watched the live stream from that same watch. She watched their toasts, their laughter, their embraces. She watched them celebrate what they believed was a victory. And she whispered as the screen flickered between camera feeds, "Drink deeply, darlings. The fall tastes better when the climb was sweet." Sebastian's laughter faded the moment their car pulled up to the front of the Leckie house. The first thing he noticed was the silence, no lights on, no familiar hum of the garden fountain. Then he saw it, suitcases, Mia's, neatly arranged on the front porch, zipped and tagged. Mia blinked, confused. "Why are our bags out here?" Sebastian stepped out slowly, something in his gut twisting. He pulled at the gate, only to find the security code unresponsive. "What the hell?" he muttered, punching in the digits again. Nothing. "Let me try," Mia offered, walking up to the keypad. She entered the numbers he'd told her weeks ago. Still nothing. Then came the final blow, a laminated sign taped to the front door. "Unauthorized access will be reported. This property is no longer under your jurisdiction." Beneath it, in faint script, was one line, "Check your inbox, Sebastian." Sebastian's hands trembled as he opened his email. A legal notice sat at the top of his inbox, sent just an hour prior. His subject line chilled him. "Final enforcement of property ownership transfer." He read it twice before his phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. "Call me immediately." Sophia executed everything perfectly. "You no longer have access." Mia was pacing now. "Why are my things outside? This has to be a mistake, right?" Her voice rose an octave. "Sebastian, say something." He turned to her slowly. "We've been locked out," he muttered. "We don't live here anymore." Mia scoffed. "You said this was your house, that you'd handled it." His jaw clenched. "I thought I did." Then, almost simultaneously, they noticed the white envelopes wedged into the smallest suitcase. One had his name, one had hers. A sudden, unbearable quiet blanketed the porch. His celebration was officially over. Sebastian crouched beside the keypad, frantically trying every old combination he remembered. His birthday, Mia's birthday, even the anniversary he once shared with Sophia. Nothing worked. The security panel flashed red, then locked them out for 15 minutes. "I don't understand how she did this," he muttered, pacing like a trapped animal. Mia stood frozen, her arms crossed tightly. "You let her outsmart you," she snapped. "You gave me promises, and now we're standing outside like criminals." Sebastian shot her a glare. "I didn't expect her to do this, all right?" His voice cracked with frustration. She was quiet, reserved. She wouldn't even raise her voice during arguments. Mia's eyes narrowed. "Exactly. The ones who stay quiet are the ones you should fear the most." For the first time, the power dynamic between them cracked. Mia saw him not as a leader, but as a fool who underestimated the very woman he discarded. Inside the house, Sophia sat by the window, hidden from sight, sipping tea as the automated locks confirmed the final update. Owen had connected the system to her phone. With one tap, she could trigger security, sound alarms, or lock them out permanently. She didn't need to. The silence outside was satisfaction enough. Her phone buzzed with a message. "They're still at the gate. Want us to call the neighborhood patrol." She typed back calmly, "No need. Let them sit with the reality for a while." Outside, Sebastian sat on the stairs, head in his hands. Mia fumed quietly beside him, scrolling through her phone in disbelief. "I have nowhere else to go tonight," she muttered. "My flat's been leased out. I moved in here for you." Sebastian didn't answer. The irony tasted bitter in his mouth. He had divorced Sophia to start over. But now, 6 hours after the celebration, he had nothing, not the house, not the access, not even the girl who once clung to his promises. Mia's composure crumbled in stages. At first, it was the clenched jaw and shaky breath. Then came the pacing, the wild glances at the neighbors who peeked through their windows. "This is humiliating," she hissed, tugging her luggage across the pavement. "People are watching. I'm not some side chick thrown out like trash." Sebastian rubbed his temples. "Lower your voice. That was the wrong thing to say." Mia whirled around. "Don't you dare tell me to calm down. You dragged me into this mess. You said she wouldn't fight back. You said this house was ours." He stood exasperated. "It was never ours, it was mine. And now it's not." Her eyes welled up, her voice breaking. "I gave up everything. My place, my job offer in Cape Town. For you. I thought you had a plan." Sebastian's silence confirmed her worst fear. He never did. He'd left one woman without preparing for what the next truly demanded. She sat on her suitcase, mascara streaking down her cheeks, anger now replaced by a hollow sense of betrayal. "You used me," she whispered. "No," he said too quickly. "We had something real." Mia laughed bitterly, wiping her eyes. "If it was real, you wouldn't have lied about securing the house. You wouldn't have let me post photos from a place we don't even own." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I was just your proof that you could still be wanted." He looked away, ashamed. The silence stretched, awkward and irreversible. Then her voice rose again. "She planned this, didn't she? She set us up." He met her gaze, and for the first time he didn't argue. "Yeah," he admitted. "I think she did." Mia stood slowly, her knees shaking. "Then maybe she's the only smart one between the three of us." Her words hung in the air like a slap. And as she walked down the street without waiting for him, Sebastian didn't follow. He simply sat back down, surrounded by the weight of everything he'd lost. Sebastian hesitated before unzipping the smallest suitcase. The letter with his name on it sat neatly on top of his folded shirts, no smudges, no creases, like it had been placed with deliberate care. His fingers hovered before picking it up. The handwriting was familiar, sharp, elegant, deliberate. He opened it slowly, the paper crackling faintly. "By the time you read this, you'll know I was never blind. I saw everything. The lies, the long nights, the lipstick. I didn't react, because reaction was what you expected. Instead, I watched, I prepared. And now I've left you nothing, not out of spite, but out of justice." The words stabbed deeper than any insult could. There were no curses, no rage, just clarity. Just truth. He sank to the curb and read it again. Each sentence was a mirror, reflecting who he had become. "I never needed revenge, Sebastian. I only needed the truth to come home to you like a loyal dog. This is that moment." Mia's envelope was shorter, colder. She sat on her suitcase down the road, reading it under a dim streetlight. "You thought you won. You thought beauty and audacity would secure what wasn't yours. But you were never competing with me. You were auditioning for a man who didn't even own the stage. And now the curtain has dropped." She blinked, her hands trembling as she turned the page to find a printed image, a candid shot of her and Sebastian at the resort, time-stamped and annotated. "Smile for the cameras. Every move you made was seen." Her jaw clenched. The invasion burned, but the truth scorched even hotter. She was never the mastermind. Just a supporting role in a play Sophia had written from silence. She tossed the letter back into the bag, but couldn't unsee it. Couldn't unfeel the slap of being outwitted. "She used us," Mia whispered aloud, almost to herself. "She made us her evidence." And for once, even she didn't know how to spin that into power. Sebastian dug deeper into his duffel bag and found a slim, matte black flash drive tucked between two dress socks, marked with a silver S. He stared at it, pulse racing, and stood to walk toward his car where he kept a laptop. As the screen flickered to life, the first folder opened by itself. Proof. What followed was an avalanche. Videos of Mia entering hotels. Audio of their private conversations synced perfectly with timestamps. Even a moment when Sebastian had muttered, "Sophia will never suspect a thing," while buttoning his shirt in a hotel hallway. He sat in stunned silence, barely blinking as the clips cycled through, each one unraveling his denial. Every betrayal he had whispered, every arrogant boast Mia had made, every private smirk, they were all there, captured like exhibits in a courtroom. It wasn't just surveillance. It was a confession played back to him frame by frame. He flinched when Mia's voice came through the speakers. "I'll have that house in a month." Watch. He closed the laptop abruptly, breathing heavily. There was no room left to pretend. She knew, he murmured. She knew everything from the start. Then, almost as if responding to his despair, his phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. Still think I was quiet because I was weak? His throat tightened. He looked at the phone, half expecting to see Sophia standing somewhere nearby, watching him through yet another lens. He had once mocked her stillness, her silence, her unwillingness to fight. But this was the real fight. Calculated, controlled, unapologetic. He reached for his keys but stopped mid-motion, defeated. There was nowhere left to run, and as the car's engine idled beside him, Sebastian came to terms with a truth he'd long buried. Sophia never left quietly, she simply left prepared. The envelope arrived 2 days later, hand-delivered to the temporary apartment Sebastian had hastily rented downtown. It bore the seal of the Lagos High Court. Inside were neatly arranged documents, a civil suit citing emotional distress, fraudulent asset concealment, and defamation of character. The attached statement from Sophia's lawyer was direct and devastating. We are seeking damages for intentional emotional harm, along with reimbursement for all joint expenses Sophia Adelaide covered while being misled about the nature of her marriage. Attached were bank statements, chat transcripts, and a highlight reel from the tracker footage, time-stamped, authenticated, and admissible. It was airtight, not vengeance. Strategy. Sebastian dropped into his couch, head in hands, unable to breathe through the growing panic. He had lost more than a wife. He'd lost the right to pity himself. Mia had already ghosted him, her phone lines deactivated, social media accounts scrubbed. Whatever performance she'd been giving was over. She was gone, leaving behind nothing but scandal-laced memories and a few unpaid bills. Meanwhile, Sebastian faced court hearings, frozen accounts, and a reputation slowly unraveling. Clients had started pulling out of deals. His name was no longer an asset, it was a liability. Calls went unanswered. Emails returned with polite rejections. His world wasn't just crumbling, it was being excavated. I thought I was in control, he muttered to himself, pacing the small apartment. But control had never been his. It belonged to the woman he dismissed, overlooked, and underestimated. Sophia had turned silence into a sword. And now, with the legal hammer crashing down on every careless decision he'd made, he finally understood that the quietest storms destroy the most. Mia didn't say goodbye. She didn't owe him that. She simply packed what little she hadn't already lost, hailed a cab, and left Sebastian standing in the middle of a barely furnished apartment with a half-boiled kettle and unopened eviction mail. The last words she uttered before slamming the door behind her still echoed in his mind. You promised me a kingdom and dragged me into a war you never knew you were losing. She hadn't cried. There was no scene, no plea. Just a hollow look in her eyes, the kind reserved for people you never respected to begin with. Her exit wasn't dramatic. It was surgical, cold, final. And for the first time in weeks, Sebastian didn't try to stop someone from walking away. He just stood there, too stunned to move. That night, the silence was unbearable. He wandered the apartment like a ghost, every echo a reminder of the home he'd lost. His phone was quiet, no calls, no messages, not even spam. The social media posts he and Mia had once curated with filters and hashtags were now flooded with comments. Where's Sophia? This didn't age well. Guess karma doesn't miss. The public wasn't blind, and they certainly weren't sympathetic. Mia's disappearance was the final blow. She had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the reputation of a mistress and a string of truths she couldn't spin anymore. He stared at the empty space where her purse had hung on the wall, her scent already fading from the sheets. And in that emptiness, he realized something cruel. Mia hadn't just left him, she had abandoned the story. The one he tried to write over Sophia's. And without her, that story crumbled fast. Sebastian walked through the city like a shadow of the man he once presented to the world. The greetings he used to receive at coffee shops had turned to awkward glances. Clients who once chased him down now pretended not to see him. Even his barber, who'd known him for a decade, acted distant, suddenly fully booked for the week. He checked his inbox daily, job rejections, declined collaborations, silence from former associates. Word had spread. The surveillance footage hadn't just reached court, it had been leaked. Clips of his resort celebration, his backhanded comments, and Mia's gleeful boasts had made their way to gossip blogs and professional circles alike. Sophia never had to raise her voice. She let the evidence speak. Now, no one wanted to be associated with a man who abandoned grace for greed and lost both. The loneliness was suffocating. Even his own mother, once blindly supportive, had called only once. "What were you thinking, Sebastian?" she asked, disappointment heavy in her voice. "You humiliated her. You humiliated all of us." He hadn't known what to say. Apologies felt hollow now. Regret couldn't fix what arrogance had shattered. He sat on the edge of his bed that night, scrolling through old photos, Sophia smiling beside him at a dinner party, her hand on his chest, eyes full of trust. He tapped the screen to zoom in. "How did I let this go?" He whispered to no one. But there was no answer. Only the haunting hum of silence. No Mia, no Sophia, no admiration. Only the echo of the life he thought he deserved, and the cold realization that he had burned the only bridge worth keeping. Sophia stood on the balcony of her new apartment, tucked away in a quiet corner of Ikoyi, a soft breeze lifting the hem of her white robe. The world around her was serene, birds chirping, leaves rustling, distant traffic humming like background music. But inside, a deeper peace had taken root. It wasn't joy. Not exactly. It was freedom. For the first time in years, she didn't wake with a weight in her chest or fear in her breath. She wasn't waiting for an apology. She wasn't listening for footsteps. She was simply existing on her own terms. Her phone buzzed with a message from Owen. Settlement finalized. He's agreed to pay everything. He didn't even negotiate. She stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back one word. Good. Isabella visited that afternoon with fresh flowers and soft laughter. "He's gone quiet," she said, settling on the couch. "No posts, no sightings. Rumor is Mia left him." Sophia poured tea into delicate mugs, her movements slow, deliberate. "She was never staying," she said calmly. He just didn't see it coming. Isabella studied her, then smiled. "You're different, stronger." Sophia nodded, not stronger. Just finally done. There was no hatred in her voice, no bitterness. Just a calm so unsettling it was powerful. She had watched a man try to rebuild his life with someone else using the pieces of hers, and when it crumbled, she hadn't cheered. She had simply turned the page. She no longer needed to defend herself, explain herself, or even speak. Her silence was no longer a wound. It was a boundary. And now it was the loudest voice in the room. The morning sunlight streamed through Sophia's window as she sat on her velvet armchair, legs tucked beneath her, reading a novel with a serene expression. The apartment was quiet but alive. Soft jazz played from the speaker, the aroma of hibiscus tea filled the air, and fresh lilies from the market stood tall in a vase by the window. The chaos that once ruled her life had vanished not by luck, but by choice. Sophia didn't need grand victories or revenge headlines. Her win was in the stillness, the kind that doesn't require explanation. Her work with the Women's Writing Collective had taken off. She was mentoring young creatives now, pouring her pain into pages and turning it into purpose. When people spoke her name now, it wasn't in whispers of pity, it was in admiration. She had rebuilt not just her life, but herself. Isabella stopped by that afternoon, dropping a homemade pastry box on the table with a grin. "You've become untouchable," she teased. "They're calling you the quiet storm at the office. Everyone's quoting your last blog post." Sophia smiled, setting her book down. "I wasn't trying to be a storm. I just stopped apologizing for showing up whole." Isabella took a bite of the pastry and nodded. "And now look at you, glowing, healing, thriving. Meanwhile, your ex is off the grid, drowning in lawsuits and silence." Sophia's eyes didn't flicker. "That part doesn't matter anymore." Her voice was warm but firm. Letting go of him wasn't the victory. Learning to exist without needing to be chosen again, that's what freed me. Outside, the world moved at its own pace, but inside her sanctuary, Sophia had found a rhythm that was hers alone. She didn't need to revisit the ashes. Her rise wasn't loud, it was sacred. In a dimly lit apartment far from the city's pulse, Sebastian shuffled through a pile of unopened mail. He looked thinner now, unshaven and hollow-eyed. The once pristine confidence in his step had dissolved into slow, heavy movements. Among overdue bills and court documents was a plain, unmarked envelope. No return address. Just his name written in clean, familiar script. He hesitated, fingers trembling slightly before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of cream paper. No long speech, no apology. Just one line written in ink that still glistened faintly in the light. I knew before you did, and I forgave myself before you ever apologized. He read it again, then a third time. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't bitter. It was final. That sentence hit harder than any lawsuit, any exile, any humiliation. It told him what no confrontation ever could, that Sophia had walked away whole, not because she won, but because she no longer needed anything from him. Not validation, not closure, not revenge. She had already healed, and he was still stuck in the ruins of a life he built on deception. He folded the letter slowly, carefully, and placed it on the table beside him like it was made of glass. Outside, the world carried on. Cars passed, laughter echoed from another floor, life moved. But inside, Sebastian finally understood what he had lost. Not just a woman, not just a marriage, but the only version of himself that had ever been worth anything when he was loved by Sophia. Here's the Bible verse, inspired by the story Proverbs 21 verses 30 to 31. Paraphrased for the story's spirit, there is no wisdom, no understanding, no counsel that can stand against the woman who watches in silence. The wicked prepare for battle, but justice belongs to her whose strength is quiet and whose heart is steadfast. This verse echoes the essence of Sophia's journey, how wisdom, patience, and quiet strength triumph over manipulation and deceit. Moral of the story: never mistake silence for weakness. Some storms don't rage, they watch, wait, and strike with precision. In a world where betrayal often dresses in charm, true power lies in the hands of those who choose dignity over destruction, strategy over noise, and self-respect over revenge. That's the end of the story. What did you learn from this story? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notification so that you'll be notified whenever we drop our next videos. Also, share this video to someone who might be interested. Thank you so much for watching.